This podcast is part of the How We Are network. For information on this episode and many other like-minded shows, visit howweare.org. That's HOWWEARE.org.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of 100 Words or Less, the podcast. I'm your host, Ray Harkins. I'm oddly shirtless as I'm recording this. I don't know why I'm so hot, and then I just decided to leave it off. Not like you really need to know that. You know, it'd make you feel a little bit closer to me, whether or not you wanted to be that. The guest today is Mr. Matt Pryor of the Get Up Kids, New Amsterdams, his own solo stuff, and just a very all-around good dude. And more on him in a minute. Let's just cut right to the chase. Propertyofzach.com, great music site. Visit it. Done. Boom. Let's talk about reviewing the show. Go to the iTunes store, type in some sentences, drop some stars. It makes the show look cooler. For those of you that have been following the show for a long time, you've noticed that there's been some ads recently. That is because you contribute to the show by doing that. Let me put it this way. Some big changes are happening as of episode 100. There's this great stuff that's coming in the future. So if you do that, I really, really do appreciate that. Let's talk about emailing the show. 100wordspodcast@gmail.com. Give me some feedback. Tell me what shows are awesome. Tell me what shows have sucked. What do you want that I need to do? I want to provide you with something awesome. It was really interesting. I had a person email me from the Jordan from Newfound Glory podcast. They had never listened to another episode. They just popped in, popped out. Totally fine. I get it. But she was like, hey, don't talk about yourself so much, which, you know, I have honestly gotten that criticism in the past. And it's something that's interesting because I really try to pay attention to that. So I'm not like, hey, here's me, like pay attention to me, even though there obviously is a bit of that within my conversations. But there are times where it's like I feel like I need to share some of myself with the person that I'm speaking to because I can either tell they're feeling vulnerable or there's something that needs to it's a transactional relationship. I can't just like let something sit there. I want to try to relate or, you know, pull something from my past experience. So if any of you, if that does kick around in your head, that's why I do it. That's why I feel like I need to put something like that out there about myself. And usually it's in relation to the fact that I've played in bands before. Like, I'm sorry, that's just where a lot of my experience comes from. I'm not trying to hype anything up and like, oh, check this thing out that I did in the past. That doesn't matter to me. That's just where a lot of my experience is coming from. So anyways, that's the sort of dialogue I have with people who email the show. So do that. Okay, Matt Pryor. First of all, I'm going to apologize for the audio in this one. This was recorded at a very, very noisy show, and the music isn't really infiltrating our conversation. It's everybody around it. I mean, basically, it was in the corner of this outdoor smoking patio. There just really wasn't a place to record. I wanted to get a conversation between him and I down on tape, face to face. And so this is what you have. So if you're bummed on the audio quality, I apologize. Do not let this reflect on our awesome editor, Tom Richfield. It is all on me and the circumstance given. And then you'll hear at one point, Anthony from Bayside just kind of hangs out with us for a moment. And so, yeah, it's definitely not the sort of the comfortable environment I'm used to recording in. I just wanted to put that caveat there. So you're not going to hear the most pristine audio quality. You're going to hear background noise. And on top of that, this show that I interviewed him at was a sideshow of this thing called NAMM, music nerds, in the sense of like music equipment nerds. And I'm sorry, if you are a music equipment nerd, that's fine. I'm in hell when I'm in Guitar Center. It's the worst place ever. And this conference and convention takes place in Anaheim, which is very close to where I live. And this show, like 90% of the people that were there had been to that event. They were still wearing their goddamn badges from that convention. Yeah, if you hear bits of conversation from people who are, what are you doing at a show like Matt Pryor's? They're not actually at that show. They're at some other random show that was right next door to it. Anyways, a lot of backstory. But Matt is a great dude. Obviously, if you've heard of the Get Up Kids, you are very familiar with his work, and anybody that has paid attention to independent music is aware of that. He also does an amazing podcast that's also part of our network that we've put together. I will eventually be appearing on his podcast soon, so, you know, we're throwing the love back and forth. But I've always wanted to talk to Matt even before he launched his own podcast. So here's what transpired, and I'll talk to you after.
I went on a limb for you. Capsized when I turned 22. Did it burn as bad for you? No bottle serves to soothe my
It's a perfect description, though. My dad's a bitch. Huh? Oh, okay. Well,
Yeah.
I guess I am. I usually start these things off with just my own introduction point to your musicalness, as it were.
Okay, my musicality?
Yes, your musicality. So I really wish, because I did some heavy internet research this morning in regards to trying to find this compilation that you guys were on.
Which one?
Because it was a Newfound Interest in Massachusetts. That was the song that was on there.
It was the Drive-Thru Records comp.
No, it was.
Or was it the best comp in the world?
It wasn't the Fadeaway Records one.
Okay, that's the best comp in the world.
Right. Honestly, I personally believe
Newfound Mass was on Drive-Thru Records comp at one point that they never gave us a copy of.
Okay, was it? I mean, there was a lot of. I mean, there was bands that were not on Drive-Thru as well on that, right?
We weren't on Drive-Thru.
That's true. Yeah. Okay, then that could have been it. But basically, it was like that song was on there. But I mean, you guys were like,
We had put out an EP on Doghouse.
Right.
And that was one of the songs on the EP.
Right.
And then how did that work? We hadn't signed to Doghouse yet, and Drive-Thru was interested in us.
Right.
And we ended up going to Doghouse, but then giving Drive-Thru that one song.
That one song. Yeah, I just remember because that song in particular. Well, that you guys stuck out like a sore thumb on that. As far
Did
as
we?
like, I mean,
I don't know. I've never heard it.
In my opinion.
Hey, Richard and Stephanie, send me a copy of the comp.
I'm looking to complete my collection. I just remember listening to that song, and this was at the time when I was like kind of starting to transition into the fact that I could listen to bands beyond Snapcase, Earth Crisis, and Strife. That was I cut my teeth on that, and I was like, okay, I can listen to things outside of that world. And basically, it's like I credit you guys, Sensefield and Texas is a Reason, for ushering me out of that and being able to listen to more.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, which was good. But I just remember, and I think that was at the time too, where a lot of people. There's a lot of comps that just came out that, it
was a comptastic world back
totally.
then. Yeah.
And like now it's just like, I mean, the idea of a comp is like, people, you say comp and people don't necessarily know what you're talking about.
Well, I mean, it's kind of, which is ironic since we live in a more abbreviated world now.
Right.
And so now it's
you think they kill, right.
It's a compilation of different bands. Right. Oh, it's a compilation.
Right. Do I need to spell this all out? Right.
Wait, do you have the straight edge swatch?
Oh, do I ever?
Dude, that's worth some real money.
Oh, yeah. I'm not messing around.
You could go to Europe and you could make some euros off of that.
This is, I got this one for like $100 from a friend that wasn't straight edge anymore. But you can go $350 on that. Probably.
We started touring out here in '97.
Right. I'm fairly certain. I know that basically once you guys started to come through, I mean, you played Coos Cafe in Santa Ana.
Many times.
And those were some of the, like, still to this day, some of the funnest shows as far as, like, just the atmosphere. And like,
I agree.
There was a lot of people there, but it wasn't...
It would be like 400 people.
Right.
It was like the living room of a house.
Totally.
And then they would let 400 people in.
Yeah.
Maybe 25, 30 of them could fit in front of the band, and then everybody else was out in the yard.
Of course, watching through the window.
Or not even watching.
Because it gets fogged up.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, or just it was an event, It
totally
was like a social event.
I remember seeing Wesley Willis there, too. And I think...
God.
It was terrifying, but I remember I think that was the most people they let in there, and I think they said they sold probably around I think it was just over 450 tickets. And I'm like,
we were proud of ourselves. We beat the Promise Ring by one ticket.
You're like, fuck you guys, we win.
We always had this sort of like unspoken silly rivalry with them.
Of course.
Just like
right.
It's like, we're one ticket over you.
Yeah, we draw more out there.
Yeah.
What are you gonna say?
One person.
But it was just it's definitely. I mean, I'm sure obviously you look back fondly at those shows, but it's just like, to me it struck me as like those are the type of shows that you guys were playing where it was like, I mean, it was, you were reaching to people outside of the community, as it were, as well, but not to the point of where it obviously, once you guys started playing House of Blues and stuff like that, where it was like people who, obviously just, got into Hit Up Kids after something to write home about or something like that.
I think it's interesting when people talk about this, because where we came from in Kansas City, there was no community, there's no scene, there's no community.
You guys had to create it, right?
We didn't have to create it, we left.
Right, that's true.
We went to where there were people who were interested in what we were doing, and we would go, closest one's Chicago,
Right.
you know, Minneapolis, and then going. But you know, the scene was really big in the Northeast,
Right.
and in Southern California,
Sure.
and so it's like those are the places that we would just go. And my now wife, then girlfriend, lived in Boston,
Right.
So I attribute much of our touring success to me just wanting to go see my
to
girlfriend.
Boston.
Yeah,
You're like, yo, we got to get out there.
write songs about Boston.
Sure, of course, Mass
Yeah.
Pike, right?
Always guaranteed to endear yourself to a city or a state if you write a song about it.
Totally. Yeah, that's true. I never really thought about it from that perspective. Where
But
it's like,
you will always have to play it every
well,
time
of
you're
course,
there.
yeah. You have no choice.
Yes, it's in the contract.
Right. Yeah, once we've done this.
Yeah.
So
Let's
you
just get this out of the way.
right. Here's Mass Pike. Just
Yeah.
first and foremost, you strike me as an exclusive Midwestern dude. Where were you
I'm
born?
from Kansas City.
Okay,
Born
yeah.
and raised in Kansas City. I live in Lawrence, Kansas now,
Right.
which is where the University of... It's a little blue dot.
KU? Yeah, of course.
It's a little blue dot in the big red state.
Totally.
And
yeah. Well, that's what I mean. Because the bottleneck that was there for a while, right?
it still is there. How do you
Right.
know that? Did you...
Yeah, I toured.
Have you played there?
Yeah, I played. Let's see, the bottleneck, and then wasn't there? Is there the Granada Theater?
Yep, that's
Yeah.
down the street from my house.
Okay, yeah, played there as well. It was the first time that I played there. It was definitely one of those things where it was just like, oh, this is weird. Why is this here? Like, but you're like, oh, college town. Like, I mean,
Yeah,
just
yeah,
as far
yeah,
as like, oh, there's stuff.
I found I lived in Kansas City, you know, all of my life, and then we started touring.
Right.
I lived in Boston for a little bit, and I've been to every major city in the U.S. and
Right.
most of them in Europe. And I think when we started having my wife and I started having kids, it was kind of like, I like this. This town is just big enough that it's not boring.
Totally.
But it's small enough that the schools are really good.
Right.
We can leave our door unlocked if we want
Yeah.
to.
It's
we
manageable.
don't do that.
Right. No. Yeah. But if you were, right. Hypothetically speaking.
We leave it unlocked when our pit bull's at home,
Right.
which is true.
Right.
But I like it there, and I like. Oh God, I was having such a nightmare today when we were driving down from LA.
Oh, it's a
and we're in the
nightmare,
traffic,
yeah.
and I'm just like, why do sensible humans live like this?
Totally. Yeah.
But
Yeah, you live your life around the traffic schedule,
Yeah.
as opposed to like, I want to go
I
here
thought
this
we
time.
were okay. We were leaving Hollywood at 2.
Yeah, oh no, that's when it starts.
2?
2 to 5.
Jesus Christ!
It's bad. Leave at 1, you're just like, oh, this is great, this is fine.
Is it bad going from here further south to San Diego? I can't remember.
From here to San Diego, it's not that bad. Like you're
Traffic wise, I know it's not that
traffic-wise,
far.
yeah, it's not that far. But yeah, no, traffic-wise, it's not bad at all.
I haven't done a West Coast van tour in a while.
Right.
Because I think the last time I was out here was... No, that's not true. We did the Where's the Band tour in a van. and
Oh,
that
yeah, that's right.
That was... Yeah.
Yeah.
But I was in a really bad headspace then, so I
Yeah,
don't
you didn't
remember
see
a whole lot.
that was with Evan and Dustin, right?
Dustin played the California shows, and
Right.
then Conley and from Saves the Day and Anthony from
right,
Bayside,
right.
who's here somewhere.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, he's right there. Hey, Ranieri, you want to get in on this interview?
What are you talking about?
Me.
We're talking about me? Hey, man.
Hey, I'm Ray.
Anthony.
You gonna go watch Max at all? Okay.
When does he play?
He's on now, I think.
Yeah, probably in a few minutes.
Or you can go watch the Led Zeppelin cover band.
Yeah, no to mind that.
Weird.
Well, we got the
Because it's Nam.
Oh,
That is the.
Answer is so
that
dude,
really does answer so many questions.
Dude, I walked up and I was like, "What are all these boners doing here?" And then I'm like, "That's right, it started today."
Oh, that answer is so amazing.
You didn't. I mean, you guys didn't see any of the badges that were walking around. It's
No.
like, I mean,
oh yeah, the backyard is like it's nuts. Right?
but and all, like people wearing their
That
badges.
makes sense that like there's like crazy security here.
Totally.
And I like pulled up and like we're playing in the little room and they're like, do you have your identification? And I'm like, no.
I do, but it doesn't say.
Yeah.
I'm playing the little room.
Yeah.
There's also crazy security because about 2.5 months ago at a Walk a Flock Flame show, 3 people got stabbed out front.
Oh, cool.
So they're a little on edge for obvious reasons.
Okay.
So like I said, Midwest, obviously, I know a lot
okay.
about Lawrence. The brothers and sisters, like what was your family structure like?
I have a brother,
Okay, older, younger?
younger but taller.
I appreciate the clarity on that. Younger but taller, okay. And so, like, mom and dad, like, what were they doing as you were coming up, job-wise?
My mom was a stay-at-home mom for a long time, and then she became a guidance counselor.
Oh, okay.
And then she has just retired recently. My dad's a lawyer.
Oh, okay.
And
What sort of law?
labor law. He represented a lot of the teachers' unions and the bus drivers' unions in Kansas City.
Sure.
And then he took that big paycheck to go represent the Major League Baseball Players Association, which is
wow.
I've
heard of that.
One of the most profitable
Yeah.
Unions
Sure.
outside of football and basketball.
Wow.
But now he's an arbitrator, so he's like, he gets paid. He was working for the New York City school. I don't know if I can even say this, but he's working for the New York City School Board.
Okay.
But he's like, if there's a dispute between the teacher, like if a teacher gets fired, then he is the mediator between the school and the teacher, and the teachers' union and the school district.
Right.
So,
Yeah, my wife's a school teacher, so I mean, she's never experienced anything like that. But there's always those layers, which are they're needed from that perspective. And so, how would you paint the picture as far as you being raised? Like, were you a little shit? Were you?
Was I a little shit?
Yeah.
He's still a little shit.
Yeah, that's true.
Was I a little shit?
And or did you, was your relationship with your parents pretty cool? Like how?
No, not really. My mom, went to Catholic school.
Okay.
My whole life, and
were your parents overly religious?
My mom's Catholic.
Okay. I guess I shouldn't say overly religious, but were they religious?
I mean, overly is subjective.
It's true. It's true. Yeah.
My dad's not.
Okay.
My dad was just a big drinker.
Okay.
When I was younger, before they split up, but my mom and I would fight about
everything,
school and church kind of stuff.
Oh.
Because it was sort of like this isn't my thing.
Right.
Like even by like 5th, 6th grade, I was like, I don't.
Yeah.
This isn't.
I don't want to read catechism. Right.
Yeah. It's not what I want to do. And she just couldn't handle it, and there was a lot of. We talk about it now, and it's like some of it's a lot of like middle class keeping up appearances kind of stuff.
Right.
And I still to this day I'm just like, I don't give a fuck what they think.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like,
right. You established that reality on your own back then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've never really thought about it like that, but that happens now when I'm like with kids, parents at my kids' schools, or it's like, they're gonna think you're a weirdo. I'm like, fuck them. I don't give a shit what they think.
Right.
They're stupid.
Right. Yeah, that's not what I'm concerned with. Yeah.
It's my little inner punk. It's my little.
Of course, yeah. I think there's always that inherent voice in people's heads that get attracted to this sort of music, where it's just like, oh yeah, like I don't need to go with the sort of quote unquote conventions, whatever that may be.
Yeah, I mean, it's just find your own way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Totally. And when did you mentioned your parents aren't together, when did they separate?
They split up, my mom quit drinking when I was in 4th or 5th grade, and my dad kept drinking, and so they split up. And then, so it was like about 5th or 6th grade.
Oh, so you were completely you were very aware of this.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I was mad initially, and then I realized that I get to have 2 Christmases.
Oh, shit, yeah.
And then I was like...
I'm familiar with that, yeah.
So...
Huge.
My drummer, so this Led Zeppelin thing, what it is they're bringing in all these like crazy, awesome heavy metal drummers to play Led Zeppelin.
Yes,
so
sure.
My drummer is now texting me with who's on over. So Carmine Appice, Bill Ward from Black Sabbath. I'm like,
you're like, cool, dude.
No, it's great.
Yeah,
I would if I've been excited to do this interview for a while because I wanted like I don't know, I enjoy doing these sorts of conversations and like I haven't gotten to do one in a while. So I'm like. If I weren't talking to you, I would be totally watching the Led Zeppelin thing.
I appreciate you. Yeah, I appreciate this all coming together.
There you go.
And that Bill Ward doesn't pull you away from it. And so, yeah, because my parents were divorced when I was like 3 or 4, so I'm just told about it. But being aware of it, obviously, at that age, but then seeing the obvious superficial benefits of like, oh, cool, like
you get 2 Christmases.
Right. And
my dad's a lawyer, so he's got more money to buy me,
sure,
better Nintendo games.
Did you find yourself having to fall on one side or the other? Because that's typical of a divorce, where it's like, oh, I'm mama's boy, or like, no, my dad's it, man.
I lived with my mom.
Okay.
And we would do weekends with my dad. My dad's not a big communicator. He doesn't talk much.
Sure.
And so we would just go see movies all the time, he and my brother and I.
Sure.
And it was to the point where it was like we had gone through every movie in the paper that wasn't like our...
Right, that you could see.
Yeah. And it's just like, that's just what we did. We'd go see movies.
That was your thing.
We'd go out to Bannister Mall, which isn't there anymore. And go see movies.
And then you... then obviously your formative years, when like junior high and high school and stuff like that, as you started to become introduced to like independent music, and like, did you give a shit about school? Like, what sort of kid were you as you started to...
I didn't give a shit about school.
Yeah.
I wasn't like a full-blown straight D student. I was about a high C.
Right.
Like, maybe an occasional B.
Yeah. You're average, I think, on the standards.
Thank you. I'm glad that you think I'm average.
Yeah, you're welcome. It's my pleasure.
No, I did enough to get by.
Sure.
I don't think it was anything conscious, and it wasn't until I got interested in music that it was sort of like, well, this is just pointless.
Right.
Like I have no use for this.
Right. This is not helping me write songs or go on tour.
Yeah.
Right. And so as you obviously, I mean, I presume that the band music life on top of the turmoil and strife that you already had with your mom in regards to the religious stuff, that probably just set it off even further. Or did your mom be kind of like, well...
I mean, we'd fight. I'm trying to remember. Like,
yeah.
It got to a point where it ended up being more about, like, what time I was going to be home.
Sure.
Once I could drive. There was this really great all-ages club that happened in Kansas City from, I guess it was, like, 93 to 94. It was called the Rumba Box. And that's where I got my... like, I was already into punk rock before then, but that's where I got my, like, formative...
some shows.
We're going to shows. We're going to see, we saw a lot of good bands. And just the one year that place was open, it was like we saw Girls Against Boys and Brainiac. We saw crazy weird German, like Casper Brodsman and weird German stuff. We saw Unsane.
Wow.
Beck played there right after Loser came out.
Holy shit.
And it was like, so we booked Beck, and then Loser hit.
And you're like, whoops. What are we
And then
gonna
it's
do?
like lines down the street. It was crazy.
Right. That's amazing. And so who was your introduction point? Because obviously you did. The typical story is that older brothers or siblings and stuff kind of get you. Into that.
It was a record store in Kansas City. I mean, okay, so if you're gonna talk about like just music in general, the first thing I really got into was like post Guns N' Roses, like LA glam stuff. Had my subscription to Rip magazine.
That's great.
And then via
Did you just want to live on the Sunset Strip? Were you just like...
I don't know if I ever made that connection. I just kind of like, these guys are cool,
right.
like...
Yeah, look at their hair.
My first concert ever was LA Guns, Dangerous Toys, and Tora Tora. My dad took me.
Killer lineup, yeah.
Saw Motley Crue on the Dr. Feelgood tour, like that kind of era.
Sure.
But from that, and I think honestly via Headbangers Ball, and then also Metallica doing a Misfits cover on Garage Days.
Totally.
It's kind of like, well, what's this?
Yeah.
And then that got me into the Misfits, and then Bad Religion got thrown in there somehow, and then once I found Fugazi, it was just like,
your
head explodes.
Right. That was the Pandora's box.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it was just kind of like, everything on Discord is great. And then you go back and you listen to some of the earlier ones. You're like, no, it's good. It's really good.
Right. For sure.
Yeah.
You're like, I think I'm convincing myself.
Beefeater's really good.
Totally. There are certain things where you're just like, yeah, no, that wasn't that. Like, it just didn't speak. Like, Lungfish never spoke to me.
No.
Like, there are certain bands where you're just like, I think I should like this, but I don't like this.
Yeah, my friends like Lungfish. I don't want to say that I don't like Lungfish.
No. I mean, I'm sure if I listened to it, it didn't
speak me.
No, it didn't speak
me. You know who
me.
else did is Shudder to Think. I never really got Shudder to Think.
I can empathize with that. It never resonated with me as well.
But yeah, so that turns into like going to these shows, and then so there's this record store in Kansas City. It was called Recycled Sounds, and it's not there anymore. But it was kind of like my little gateway, and the people that were there,
the clerks,
that were there were also some of the people that owned the club. And then eventually I started working there, and then it was just kind of I would try to then be that guy. And like,
how old were you when you started working at a record store?
It's funny because I started working there right when Get Up Kids started touring.
Right.
And Anne, the owner, I think she just wanted to have like people in the scene.
Oh yeah.
Like,
it's a smart move.
It is, and I was like, okay, you still want me to work here? Because I'm going to be gone for the next like 6 months, and then I'm going to be home for like 3 weeks. And
right. Because I need a paycheck, right?
And she's like, no, it's fine. It's totally fine.
Yeah.
And I think the other clerks resented me for it.
Oh,
but,
yeah.
We listened to, and that was weird too because that was when like our first record was doing really well in like independent stores, so like people are buying it from me.
You. Oh.
And it was just, and they don't know, and it's just kind of like, this is awkward.
Dude, I experienced this. I worked at a record store, and obviously the people that you were working with would like do embarrassing shit, like either play your record, you're just like, that's like, stop it,
just to mess with you,
right? And then if a person asks like, oh, what is this, and you're just like, oh fuck. dude, don't ask me. Like,
I remember though, one of my big victories was the kind of like metal glam guy, because they had like the indie rock girl.
Of course, you got to cover all your bases.
The hip hop kid, the white hip hop kid.
Right.
It was like slinging Jurassic 5 and all that stuff. Yeah. And then the kind of like guy who would have been at this show tonight.
Right.
But in Kansas City, it's like kind of like the kind of metal, big Kiss fan, but like always wore T-Rex shirts, like very like glam.
Oh, sure.
And then we got into this conversation about Hanoi Rocks, because I was a big Hanoi Rocks fan because of Guns N' Roses, and it was just like, he's like, all right, you're all right.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like,
yeah. I was like, oh man, I got validation. That's perfect. And so
I know about 80s glam metal.
Right. You're like, yeah, I'm cool, man. We're all right. But did you always have the conception, like, once obviously music started to become a more prominent part of your life, that you're like, yo, I gotta play in a band? Like, I have to?
I don't know. I just always did. I don't know that it was a conscious effort. I mean, I played my first show when I was 15.
Right. And what was that? I mean, that for all intents and purposes is your first band, right?
Yes, it was called Take a Joke.
Take a Joke?
Yeah. And I played...
What were you attempting to emulate?
I have no idea. I was 15, hanging out with 18-year-olds.
Sure.
And I played drums for like 3 songs and then guitar for like 3 songs.
I loved how that was like...
a thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, you thought that was like, you're like, oh yeah, but our drummer can play this song better, so why don't you guys switch off with this song? Why?
No one does that anymore.
No! Because it's unreasonable.
Because it's kind of stupid.
It's so dumb. But Take a Joke to me sounds like you guys could have been a pop punk band, like, and when I say pop punk, like, you know, like Sam I Am, that sort of stuff.
Oh, okay.
And like not in like a Blink 182 sort of thing.
Right.
Even though it could, the name could be labeled on that.
It was not that well thought out.
Right.
But that was my first band, and then that morphed into a band called Secular Theme, which was we were emulating the Nation of Ulysses.
Oh yeah.
So we wore suits.
Suits,
but it was like noise rock. It was like we wanted to look like Nation of Ulysses and be crazy, but we were playing like Chicago, like
shellac type stuff.
Not crazier than that. Like,
okay.
What was the name of that record label? It's not Thrill Jockey. It's
Touch and Go.
No.
Okay.
It was distributed by Touch and Go.
Stick?
No. I'll know it if I hear it. I can't think of what it's called. But it was all the like really noisy stuff. Like
AMREP.
It was like
Reptile.
It wasn't AMREP. They were from Minneapolis.
They were right.
But we would play with those bands.
Okay, sure.
And but yeah, it was just.
That's
crazy.
pretty. And so you were like probably what, like 16, 17 at the time?
Yeah, I was in high school.
That's kind of advanced for that sort of age.
Is it?
I think so.
Okay.
I mean, because I look at 16, 17-year-olds, and usually they're either playing like obviously typically terrible hardcore, or
well, I mean. You can make the argument that that stuff it's not.
But you had an agenda. You were like, we were dressing up, we were doing this thing, we were being loud and noisy.
Yeah,
so that's a little more. That's advanced. I would define that.
I don't know if I would qualify it as advanced.
Or maybe the ambitions were advanced.
I think if you're like an actual like jazz player who like if you're like John Zorn and like you choose to make noise,
right.
That's advanced.
If
you're just a punk kid and you decide to blow on a out-of-tune saxophone instead of playing 3 minor threat chords,
right.
That's just kind of, it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. It's
totally.
It's the same ignorance is bliss kind of thing.
Right. It's a completely different delivery mechanism.
Yeah. We just happened to be really into like noisy stuff. There was between Minneapolis and Chicago and St. Louis, there was like all these like really noisy bands.
No, that's that's very indicative of what was happening in the Midwest.
And it was kind of like a post-grunge kind of thing, like
total reaction to it.
Yeah.
It's like if you liked those choruses that Nirvana and every other band did, we can play none of that.
Yeah.
And be really loud. I get that.
And then I went from that into discovering the somewhere between Ben Weasel and God, I'm trying to think of what would be a good example. We were debating. It was a thing where it was like you're either a Lookout punk rock band or an Epitaph pop punk band.
Oh yeah. There's a huge line in the sand.
Yeah, and it was for some reason the only thing is I will say NoFX because that's a band I actually liked.
Right.
And like Pennywise was the one that always came up, and I never really got into Pennywise. But
yeah. You had to be from California to really get on the ground.
I think you had to be from California to get into a lot of that stuff.
Yeah. I reference like Lagwagon, No Use for Name, a lot of that stuff. For me, it was important, but anytime I mention it to anybody in the East Coast or even the Midwest, they're just like, yeah, that wasn't a thing. Didn't make sense.
For me, that kind of like epiphat sound.
Yep.
It's like Bad Religion is grandfathered into the whole thing, and honestly, NoFX is as well.
Yeah.
And then it's like it's Propagandhi
Yes.
and Dillinger Ford.
Right.
But they're from the Midwest, so they
Right,
get
of
an
course.
honorary pass.
Yeah.
And I feel the same way about like hardcore, like the whole Rev 1 through 50 thing doesn't do anything. Very little of it. Like even Texas, who I do like, I think Texas Reason is good. I don't
You didn't worship at their altar.
and I don't really get. I don't get it.
Right.
But
Yeah.
and I think Norm is a sweetheart, and
Right.
you know, like I understand their place in the
Of course.
in the lineage. You know, if Page Hamilton invented drop D, and then Walter took it from there, and then Texas made it poppy.
Right.
That's just kind of
Yeah. It just never you never identified with it. That's completely understandable. The so then as you obviously as Get Up Kids started to become more of a thing in your life, when were you forced to make that decision of like, yo, this is something? Because I mean, you also had kids earlier in your life, right?
Yeah, but I was already doing this full time.
Right. So yeah, that didn't impact the decision based off that. But
our first tour was with Braid in 1997, and I specifically remember it was like Northeast tour, Midwest Northeast tour.
Right.
And I specifically remember because we were going to tour over the summer, and everybody was going to go back to college because everyone had started. Our drummer we picked him up from his last day of high school to start our first tour.
Yeah.
And it was just kind of like everyone else had like a year. I was the oldest. I went to college for 1 year.
Yeah.
Pretended to go to college for a second year.
Sure. Right.
Jim and Rob went to college for 1 year, and then Ryan was going to go to college when we were touring that summer. And then somewhere on that tour, we were kind of like, this is fun, and we're making money. Like
on your first tour.
Yeah.
Which is crazy.
Well, but it's we owned the van outright, and we were staying on people's floors, and we were having $3 a day per diem. So
as well you should. Yeah. But I mean, I always define success in the earliest touring stages of bands when, for one, you're not putting your own money into the gas tank, which that's already a victory.
Okay, yeah, that's true.
And so, but I mean, on your first tour, that you're already like, covering the quote unquote basics, so to speak. Like that must have been obviously like heartening, and obviously made you guys not consider going to school anymore.
Well, it was just kind of like, let's ride this out and see what happens, because like school's always there.
Right. But you felt that momentum kind of immediately from that perspective. I mean,
momentum's not the right word that we felt. I mean, I think we just thought we're like, hey, we could probably do this for a little bit.
Right.
And then things just kept doing better and better and better.
Sure.
Every tour.
Yeah, you kept building on that foundation.
That's when people ask me about like how that thing went. It's like it's very gradual.
Oh yeah.
From our perspective, it was very like, okay, there's 200 people this time, and the next time there's 400 people.
Totally. Well, it's I mean, during those times when you've got no ambitions beyond just the let's do this next thing. Like, whether it's like, let's do this next 7-inch, or let's do this next comp song, or whatever. Like, you don't have this grand plan in regards to like, I wonder where our 4th LP is going to be.
There's a point where, when we were touring, where I did put in some, like one of the reasons we signed to Doghouse in the first place is because they had European distribution.
Right.
And we're like, oh, some of the bands on Doghouse have gone to Europe.
Totally.
And we went to Europe for 6 weeks, and we each made $200.
Right. You're like, wow.
Which was a victory,
Of course.
But then it was like, okay, I want to go to Japan.
Right.
I want to go to Australia.
Sure.
And I want to do a tour in a bus.
Right.
And then it was like, so by 1999, we had accomplished all that.
You're like,
and I was kind of like,
I got all those check marks.
Like, I don't know what else to do now.
Yeah. You're like, well, might as well just wrap it up.
Yep. It's called a day, kids.
Hitting on that same point, I never remember, like, obviously when you guys started to, when Something Right Home came out, and obviously that hit in ways that obviously you guys, and expected to a certain extent, but not to the level that it came. I personally never heard, especially from the kids that obviously got into the first 2 7-inches and 4 Minute Mile, saying that, calling you guys sellouts. But I'm sure that you heard it from just the conversations that were had around you. But I never heard it.
The only time that ever came up was we did a tour. The first tour we did, it started the month before Something Right Home came out, which was September '99.
I remember that.
And we're like, we're going to do everywhere and anywhere that'll have us in the U.S. So it was a 70-day long, so a 10-week long tour.
Right.
And we're like, okay, we're going to do the first 2 weeks in the van on the East Coast, and then we're gonna get a bus.
Yep.
Because it's a long-ass tour, and we got a shitty bus with a crazy bus driver who the first thing he did when he got to Lawrence to pick us up was buy a bong.
Right. Perfect.
And,
yeah. Let's start this off right.
He got a ticket doing 96 in the bus. Crazy Tony.
Super safe.
And then he got real drunk and came to one of our shows, and he's like, "Let's look up hookers in the phone book." And it's crazy.
That's amazing.
It takes a certain kind of person to be a bus driver anyway, but
totally.
it takes a super certain kind of person to be a cheap bus driver.
Oh, yeah, to discount? Yeah.
But we were still playing a couple, like, I've never played at Gilman, but, like, we would play at, like, Che Cafe in San Diego, and people threw quarters at us. But I think that was, like, 3 or 4 people. Everybody else didn't give a shit.
Yeah.
And then James just goes, "Can't you guys throw cigarettes?"
Perfect James response. Yeah, because I found it interesting that didn't obviously like get thrown upon you guys, like just like I said from like the sort of larger conversation, just because it was like, well, no, because you've heard them all along, and like each record made sense as far as the progression was concerned.
Musically, it never. I don't think it ever came up. At least not to our face. I don't know if that's what people were saying behind our back.
Right.
The thing is, though, like anybody who is being hating, like all the hardcore guys like this, and as Rick to Life once said, I like these emo shows because there's lots of chicks at them.
Chicks around, of course. Yeah.
And so we got the cute little boys with the glasses on the bass and drums, and just like, this is where the girls are at, man.
Of course, this is the show where both girls and guys can feel like they're in a safe environment, and they will be allowed to like the band, like both collectively. It's a shared experience. As opposed to like, hey, I'm watching Vision of Disorder. Can you hold my hoodie and play Mosh? It's like, no.
Well, and I think also too, like just not coming from a scene,
right?
And just kind of being outside of that, we're just like, I don't give a fuck about your scene.
Right.
It's like we're in the Kansas embassy when we're in our van. You know what I mean? Like, like the first time we played at CBGB's was with Spaz and Monster X, and Braid, and the guys in Monster X made the flyers, and you can find them online now. It's like a picture that says like, "Get a kid, some shitty band from somewhere." Braid, more shitty emo from the Midwest.
Totally.
But it was like, we didn't care.
Yeah, you didn't care. You're like, we're just gonna play the show.
Yeah.
And so then as things like, I mean, so when did you have your first kid? Like, was that like after Something Right Home came about?
My daughter was born. My wife was pregnant with my daughter when we were making On a Wire. So she was born in 2002.
Sure.
The record came out in... I think the record... I left for that tour 4 weeks after she was born.
Okay.
And it was like the hardest, most awful thing I've ever done in my life. It happens. It still happens. But
sure. Yeah, I mean, so that was like the biggest gut.
That was like the kind of like, hey, we're gonna have to push bus call back because I'm just sobbing uncontrollably because I don't want to leave.
Right. So yeah, because that's to me that's because you've obviously had to adjust multiple times in regards to not only obviously what's happening in the context of the band, but then also with your life that you, because I mean, not many band dudes sit down and are like, hey, I'm married and I have this thing, like when, stereotypically like earlier in your career. And then to have, not only to have a wife and like a relationship you have to actually tend to.
Well, our band's career arc really peaked like right around the time I got married.
Right.
And we started having, my wife got pregnant, and it's kind of like, well, I'm making good money doing this. Like, I'm not going to stop.
Of course. Well, yeah, I'm sure that was never part of the conversation.
And then it's kind of like, since then, it's kind of like, well, I'm really not fucking qualified for anything else. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
I've already gone down this road so far.
Yeah. Well, I did this. This happened just recently because, like, I don't think I've seen Anthony since I got, like, super burnt out. But, like, I quit playing music. And I went and worked on a farm.
Right.
But then, like, my wife had me do a resume. And I've never done a resume in my life. And I was doing it, and I was like, I'm basically like a business manager, a manager, a tour manager, a merchandise
product manager,
Yep. A bus driver.
You feel like you're manufacturing.
I'm a travel agent.
Right. Yeah.
I'm a nanny.
Totally. Even though you feel like you feel like you're manufacturing these titles, like there is truth to that. But from the real world perspective, they're going to look at that and they're just be like, "But you were just in a band. It doesn't mean anything."
Yeah, it's like I was a page at a library in 1998.
You're like,
that was like
that's my last
job.
professional reference.
And so then I even applied at the library, and they're like, nah.
You're like, do you use computers? We use those now.
I know how to use a computer.
Right.
I can do a spreadsheet.
Right. And so obviously, how did you push yourself through all of those adjustments as far as like how you were trying to, keep your home together as you were obviously having to do these other things?
As far as like going on tour?
Yeah.
Unhappily.
Sure.
It was kind of like, I got super, super burnt, and Get It Kids broke up in 2004.
Of course.
But we technically broke up. I quit the band in 2004. We broke up in 2005.
Right.
And
do you think that was? I'm sure a lot of it was. Obviously it was a combination of a lot of different things, but I'm sure what you were feeling as far as continually leaving started to play a bigger part of that.
Well, and I get dark.
Yeah.
It's especially when it's kind of like when you start doing things that like people only want to hear the old stuff, and I totally understand that. I'm that guy too.
Of course.
But it can be taxing on you,
night after night, right?
Yeah, when it's like that's all you want to hear, and it's like I'm just sick of fighting.
Right.
And it's just like I'm sick of trying to convince you that this is good, and it's just like fine. I was good until I was 19. I'm gonna go home and and I don't think that that's true, but like when that happens a lot, it can be wearing on you.
Well, yeah, because the narrative that's created by other people, that's the reality you live in. Even though you're like, I don't feel this way, but that's just what you're soaked in and steeped in.
Well, and you got to find a balance with it. Like you got to be able to you don't want to disregard that part of your life. I'm very proud of everything that band has done. Yeah. I celebrate it, but it's like. Unless we're doing like a 4-minute mile show,
right.
I don't want to play 6 4-minute mile songs. You know what I mean?
You're like hearing the deep cuts, right? Right.
So, and that's actually been kind of cool lately because like we went to Japan in November, and we just did 4-minute mile something right home about front to back, and it was just kind of like, this is great.
Yeah, this is fun. No pressure.
It's like
plus you're in Japan,
which is a bonus, but it's kind of like a high school or a college reunion. We're like, let's hang out.
Yeah, this is fun as shit.
Yeah. Remember that time?
Yeah, remember these songs? These are fun to play. Remember this?
This song's stupid. Why are you...
Why did we write this?
Oh, God. There was one on there, and I'm like, this whole middle section is dumb. And I was like, they're like, that's how you wrote it. And I was like, well, can we just cut it out?
Speaking of drummers...
And they're like,
can we rewrite this?
Or, why am I playing the lead and singing, and Jim's not doing anything? You're like, what the hell kind of sense does this make?
Right.
Oh, it was written by a 17-year-old. That's why.
That's why. We felt like that was what we needed to do at the time.
Yes.
For you, obviously, in the duration of that, the time when the Get Up Kids were obviously, reaching the peak, what were some of the most, surreal moments that you personally were just like, this is... where you were able to feel that sort of out-of-body experience where it's like, this is weird that this is happening to us, whether it's the business side of things or whether it was these are weird, we're playing these.
It was never an out-of-body experience kind of thing. It was just kind of that's weird.
Oh, that's happening right now.
When we opened for Weezer,
right?
The guys in Cheap Trick came to the show in Milwaukee.
Right.
Yeah, Milwaukee at the Eagles Ballroom. You played the Eagles Ballroom, right? Yeah. So the guys in Cheap Trick, they're like, would the guys in Weezer want to play a couple songs with the guys in Cheap Trick? And Weezer said no. Right. And so we're like, fuck yeah, we'll totally do that. So we learned Surrender and Hello, Ladies and Gentlemen. We played them with Robin Zander and Rick Nielsen. And we're like, oh my God, we're playing with Cheap Trick. And one of my favorite memories is that Rick, the guitar player, was borrowing one of Brian Bell's guitars, his Les Paul Custom. Right. At the end of the song, he took it off and threw it into the crowd. And I've never seen a guitar tech dive faster than that. Yeah, it was pretty funny. So that's the kind of stuff where you're like,
right.
I don't know. It's just when I was like, hey, have I ever told you about that time we played with Cheap Trick?
Right. You're like, that's really weird.
That time we were at a bar and Billy Joe from Green Day's Bouncers had to break up a fight. That was fun.
That was
Or
fun.
that time when we took Billy Joe guitar shopping.
That was the thing we did.
And they said they would give him a Telecaster for $300 cheaper if he would sign it. And I was like, that doesn't make any sense.
He would sign his own guitar.
It didn't make any sense.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense. the thing that we were talking about that I wanted to reference, where it's like the like when I started to see you guys play. So I mean, it's obviously like we're only 3 years apart, but I would watch you. I would watch Get Up Kids, and at that time, because I was like 17 or whatever, or maybe even younger than that, and I'd be like you're so old. You're so like I mean,
thanks, man.
I mean, not like you looked old, but it was just like this is you're doing something. You're doing something. This is crazy, and it's something that's so far removed from me. But then now, like obviously, I mean, this happens with everybody as you get older, where it's just like, oh yeah, I mean, we're basically the same generation, same age,
yeah.
And like it's just funny how that shrinks, and it's like, oh yeah.
Well, it's interesting to me, like talking to Max, or even talking to Ant, like because you guys started touring in what, 99, and so it's just like 2 years removed, but it's the same shit.
Yeah, totally.
And like with Max, it's interesting because he kind of he's like
it was like 2000, 2001, right?
Oh wait, no, because it's the 10-year anniversary of that first record this year, so I think
so even later, yeah.
But just kind of this interesting, like things were already put in place by the time there was already like an infrastructure there.
Totally, yeah, and I think that's why, just because it's like, even though it's like I was right in the precipice of starting to tour with my own bands, but it was just like, oh my god, these guys are really doing it. Like they must be so much older than I am. And it's like, oh no, they're not really. They're the same age, essentially. And I just find that funny, like when you do
just know how to pack a van.
Yeah, exactly. Just know how to pack a van.
I remember my buddy Jason came to the show at the Sugar last night. I've known him forever. He used to work at Sub Pop, and he actually was trying to sign us to Sub Pop when we were.
Oh, sure, yeah. When you did that singles club and stuff like that, yeah.
And he had this whole thing about how impressed he was that we had like we had a loft in our van and everything was like perfectly packed, and it was like really like. It's like none of these bands like work this hard. And I'm like, that's just what we did. It's just that's what we do, man. Of course, we're gonna bring an 810 cabinet and 2 Marshall half stacks in a 12-person van.
Right? Why not?
We have total sense.
We have to make that happen. Tell me more about your experience. Obviously, like you said, you became so burnt out and jaded on music in general. Because the
last tour I did actually was with him, the Where's the Band tour, and both. Me and Chris Conley was just burnt because he'd been touring too long and he needed a break. I was burnt and I'm like, this is fucking stupid and I'm not going to do this anymore. And he just keeps going, yeah, you'll be gone like 6 months and you'll be back. I'm like, no, man, I'm out.
I mean it this time.
I mean it.
Right.
You say every tour we've done, which is like 4 tours?
Something like that, yeah.
You say that.
There's always a point.
I really meant it that time, and I really did do it for like 8 months. Well,
And so, I mean, what inspired the fact, like, you basically just wanted to, like, unplug and just be like, I'm not doing anything in relation to music?
I just felt stupid. I just got, like, I was sick of driving. I was sick of,
everything.
Just the whole thing.
Right.
I wasn't sick of music. Like, I wasn't sick of writing. I wanted it to get away from it just being my job and have it get back to being something I did for fun.
Of course.
Where it's like, oh, okay, so I want to have like a job, and then I'll play music for fun.
Sure.
And I think what I learned from that whole experience is that I need to find a way to make playing music fun.
Sure.
And so some of it, like this tour has been kind of hard because it's a West Coast band tour, so it's like a long ass drive.
Yeah, of course.
Luckily, I've started watching Breaking Bad, so that's taken up a lot.
Oh, you're fine. Yeah. You have the rest of this tour planned.
Basically, I have the whole.
Yeah,
I just finished season 4 last night, and I'm kind of like, so that's it. How can that not just be it? Like, how can there be a whole nother season?
There is.
Yeah, I know. And everybody says it's good, so I'm just kind of like, all right.
Yeah, you're good. You're fine.
I'll have to trust you on it.
Yep.
But yeah, it's just the
put like a fresh coat of paint on it in order to be excited about it in a way.
To a certain degree. I mean, that's part of the reason of like bringing out the bass player and the drummer that I play with, because they're people that I find really positive influence, and like I like being able to like make a louder sound.
Yeah.
Sometimes when you're just playing by yourself, it can just
lonely.
You're lonely all day, and then you're lonely on stage. And
right. Don't have anybody to hang out with.
Yeah.
Right. And so that do you feel like that? Those 8 months away was worth it? Like, did it give you that clarity that you wanted, or was it just okay?
No, it was very beneficial. I'm kind of broke, but it was. And it was also when I kind of discovered like doing podcasts and stuff like that. And I got really into that because I would just be sitting there, picking turnips, listening to
Mark Maron. Right, hanging out with him.
Yeah. And this is the first tour I've done where like my podcast junkiness has come into play. Where it's like we're listening to Pete Holmes a bunch. Of course, it's just like those are like 3 hours long.
That's a marathon. Yeah.
It's like that's my shift.
Right. I got this.
That's a good shift. If I can do a Pete Holmes podcast, that's a good shift.
Right. And the obviously, since you've always seemed to have a support system at home. Whether it was like your mom obviously understands what you do now, and like does there ever come into play like, hey Matt, are you gonna stop touring at all anytime soon? Like,
like I said, she's a guidance counselor, right? So like I do go to her when I was kind of going through that, like kind of for advice in that area,
right?
The big thing that we have is that my wife's family, they lived with us for a while,
right,
and now they just live around the block from us, and so it's a very like tomorrow morning when my wife has to go to Kansas City really early, Grandma's coming over at 6:30 to get the kids ready for school, and it's a very multi-generational family. And they're a little bit older now, so that's
a little bit easier. Yeah, I have a 2.5-year-old. That's exactly the same way that both my parents and my wife's parents live within the proximity. That's exactly what they do. We go to work, handle our shit, they come over, take care of the kids. And,
that's what grandmas are for.
Oh, dude. And people that raise children without family near them at all, it's really hard. I mean, it's doable.
I can only imagine.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to.
Yeah.
And so with the, kind of to wrap things up, the idea of, obviously since you enjoy podcasting and you're experimenting with so many different mediums in regards to like how you present yourself, from like, hey, I'll do a fucking stage at concert. Like you were doing all these things, and, downright all these things that you're obviously putting yourself out there in ways that you probably 5 years ago someone would have told you that you'd been doing that, and you're probably like, I don't think so. Or do you think you're like I'm open to new experiences?
I kind of feel like that's the way the industry is right now.
Okay.
Like that traditional. Everybody's learned that like you can't make as much money doing anything but touring, of course. And so everybody's touring, and it makes it more difficult.
Right.
But then, and I don't like touring anyway.
Right.
So. I'm investigating these opportunities. It's like having a web-based business. You know what I mean?
Right. But web-based small business.
Right. And I'm just trying to like find the things in there that I like. I did a Kickstarter one time, and that was cool. But at the same time, the fulfillment aspect of it
is so much fun.
Really crushed my soul.
Of course.
The Stage It thing is a cool concept. I'm not. It's weird to play for people. People are there, but they're not there.
Right.
And then the downright thing's been really cool too, because it's just sort of it's a way for me to make money when I'm home and to connect with people. And
yeah, I'm sure it'd be challenging in some capacity as far as like, oh wow, this is a weird request of what I have to do.
The only ones that are difficult in that regard, because it's like 90% like for wives or husbands or
right significant others, right?
Yeah. There's some times where it's like the song's for my nephews, their dad committed suicide 6 months ago, and those are the ones where I have to be like, oh God.
That is heavy, right?
That's like I don't know what to do there.
Right.
But it's,
yeah.
But I do it.
Right. But you do it. That's obviously when the challenge presents itself.
It's been difficult on this tour because this tour is the first time I've done the downright thing and the podcast since I started doing them, and it's like there's no fucking time to do this shit when you're on the road.
Totally. You gotta pull stuff together and be like, I've got this.
Because we're just getting like one room for the three of us, and it's like, hey guys, can you guys go fuck off for an hour so I can like record songs?
Yeah. How would you? Yeah, go occupy yourself.
Like, why don't you just get your own hotel room? Like, shut up. I don't want to.
Because that's more money. Right. That's more money. When did a random aside? When did you? Because obviously you've made it apparent that you don't like touring from a larger perspective. When did that start to come into your life?
This is a new way I've been phrasing it. I don't dislike touring. I don't like being away from my family.
Of course. Right.
Touring itself is fine.
Right.
The drives are a bit rough, but
they are. Right.
The performing is really fun. Seeing friends is really fun.
Of course, right.
Getting to go places is really fun.
Right.
But you do get this kind of thing where you're in Europe. I always call it cathedral burn.
Sure.
Where you're just like, oh, I'm in this gorgeous city, but I have to be here with you assholes.
Right. Of course.
You know, like
right.
I can't.
I have to be in a 10-block radius of wherever I'm at.
Yeah.
And there's probably a lot of other cool stuff.
Well, it's not even
away.
that. It's kind of like, I want to go to Paris with my wife.
Of course.
Not with my band.
Yeah, not that interested in that. But when did the enjoyment from that perspective start to fade? As far as just like, this is our third time through Boise, Idaho this year.
I think that just happens with any band. It's just a matter of how
often you're out there.
Well, just how in your head you are about it.
Sure.
Like, I've stopped at the same gas station between here and wherever
of course, right,
1,000 times, and it's just kind of like, you can either be like, oh, hey, I like this place, or you can be like, this
place again. Right. I wish they actually refilled the windshield.
Yeah.
The wiper stuff.
But there's still good stuff. I mean, it's still
it's still exciting. Right. You wouldn't be sacrificing your time away from home if you obviously didn't feel some level of enjoyment.
Yeah, that's true.
Right. Well, I appreciate you hanging out on this loud patio with me, and we'll see.
Out.
We will see what my editor thinks about that.
All right, there you go. That wasn't too bad, right? We got through it together, and I appreciate that. Mad props to our editor, Tom Richfield, because I'm sure this one was a bear to get through. He didn't need to work as hard as he did on that particular episode, but he does, and so just show him some love. I try to show him so much love. Anyways, bunch of great shows coming up. We have someone from Sea Haven. We have someone from La Dispute. We have someone from Sleeping Giant. I'm not going to reveal who on all of those things, but we've got a lot of fun stuff coming up. So visit propertyofzach.com, visit 100wordspodcast.com, and until next week, be safe, everybody.